Checklists can be incredibly useful and helpful. They will get you to a point where at least you know that you're not making big mistakes and you will get to that base level of performance. And while they are not all-encompassing and perfect solutions in general, they won't get you to the super advanced 8-figure range, but they will get you consistent results and at least ensure that you will not make mistakes. So here in this video, we will cover 10 checklist items for the front page, and we'll do it with a very practical screen share with examples. If you don't know me yet, I'm Larsen, founder of ZeroGurus.com. I regularly consult 7- and 8-figure stores to improve their stores further with conversion, average order value, and lifetime value optimization. So it's very much a bread and butter of what I do. And with that said, let's jump into the pointers. All right, here we are with the screen share. Let's start with the checklist then. First item, prominently displaying your store's value proposition. Here is Kettle and Fire, and their value proposition is better bone broth for better living. So it's directly with farmers, and this improves the product. And then you have a call to action that is prominent, which is pointer number 3, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves. There is clearly about bone broth. You have a little bit of an idea of what the different ones are. So this is a well done one. I'll show you a couple of different ones here. So this one, from a copy perspective, is good. With the implementation, at least for desktop, is not so good. But best toys for your kids to have fun and relieve stress. So that's straightforward. So stress relieving tools on kid toys, and then they can shop with confidence knowing that this is the category. Let's go for one more. So this is Casper, better sleep for just $9.95. So that's clearly about better sleep with mattresses. So they produce mattresses with better sleep. So it's understandable what this store is about. What will I find here? And there's no questions from that perspective. For the next pointer, checklist item number 2, it's using quality and relevant hero banner images. As you see here in Casper, this is a very relevant image. It's a quality image as well, and it's clearly about mattresses. So it matches the headline, and it is cognitively fluent from that perspective. Here's another quality hero banner image. It's from Perfect Keto. They show the brand here. They show a little bit of a different products that they have. So instantly you can make a little bit of a conclusion about what is on offer. So you are in a better position to work from here as opposed to not having an image or only having one product. Then let's go over some not so good examples where the banners are not as quality or don't work as well. So here's an example from Shane, a huge store. Their banner is just going all over the place, and you can actually see it's refreshing itself. So this makes it quite unusable. And there's a lot of different text here. Let me see if I can actually stop it. And it can be difficult for the eye to settle into this kind of images. Where are you supposed to read first? It's just a little bit unclear what is the main thing here. So if you click this, or if you miss this Chinese New Year thing, then it won't make much sense. Next up, we have Pura Vida bracelets, a huge store. I wouldn't be in a position to critique them in any way. All I can say is that do not do this for your own store, where they are just leading with the products. There's no value proposition, there's no explanation here. Probably most people visiting this store have some kind of an idea already about Pura Vida, what it is, etc. So these people can get away with it, but you cannot. Next up, we have an example here. Just this is lazy. You have no idea what the store is offering, and just not using the opportunity to add products and like some context that supports the message. Checklist item number 3, having one prominent call to action. We'll go over a couple of different examples. What I mean is that it's clear what I should do on this particular page. And there's a little bit of subtlety to this point. So here you have this call to action to shop, and you have a clarity, at least from this subheading, what you are about to shop. They actually have a little bit of a different implementation on their Australian side. I think this is even better, because now the call to action is actually where the iPad would be, and it's not so much on top of the image. So this is a good implementation. But note that you can actually still have a couple, as long as the path is clear. So in this kind of case, you would have one prominent call to action if you have women and men split, for example, on this pattern. So they are not competing. You know, most of the people know whether they are male or female. So that's a good split there. Or another example would be this kind of thing, where you can actually clearly like shop all bags. Or if you are not sure, you can also find a quiz. So those are the two clear ones. So you know, okay, there's no competition between these two. Okay, let's look at some of the other examples. One example could be to not have a call to action at all. So if the page was something like this, in this kind of case, it is actually hidden here under the fold, but it won't show up to desktop users. Next up is an example of just having so many call to actions. That's like really difficult to tell where you should click. So if the attention is everywhere, then it's nowhere. And here we were to look at this from a heat mapping perspective. And here is their heat map. So you wouldn't have a clear perspective of, okay, what is the eye supposed to do here? So there's some attention here, some attention there, and then it's just spread out all over. And that's not the way you want to do it, because this adds so much cognitive load and overwhelm already on this. It stresses people out, makes them more distracted, and then gets them to leave earlier. Another example here about missing this as just this kind of weak no button and just a discount code here. It's not really calling me to do anything, it just states that. So that's on the prominence of call to actions. Next we have navigation. So good example of a navigation here. You have clearly shopping related pages. Then you have bestsellers, bundles, and subscriptions. So they are all on the left. And then there's the content and learning pages there on the right. So in this kind of case, you actually get funneled into this, but that's something you don't need to worry about as a smaller merchant. So let's just try to optimize it to the peak. Notice like how this feels intuitive. It just nicely slots in to what you'd expect the navigation to be. So that's a easy navigation could be operated by your grandma type of principle. Here's a similar example where you do have a little bit more levels. So this is more of an old school store. There's a lot of stores that used to do it like this. But the main thing here is still clear. This is the one with clear drop-down menus. That, okay, engagement drinks, shape, size, budget, design, etc. So you can go from here and then find out your thing. So it's a clear thing whether you are funneled into diamond or gold or so on. And one quick thing to add to the navigation is that the more advanced your visitors are, the more complicated you can be with your navigation, or the more categories you can have. For example, on stores targeting older people, this might be a suicide to have this many categories. But these people are very internet savvy, that Fashion Nova is targeting. So in that kind of case, younger people can navigate this and might even like this kind of approach where there's a lot of options you can click on, and you have a higher confidence audience in their choices and abilities to use this kind of store. Last thing to say about navigation is that on an increasingly mobile world, the navigation will happen more and more on pages and less on mobile menus, because the menus on desktop are available by default. Here they take one extra click and often another one to open up the submenus. So what you'd want to do is make the homepage navigation easy as well. So you have the different categories, perhaps bestsellers, and you can find your links from here as opposed to getting to this dead end where you cannot find what you'd be looking for. So generally speaking, having a more mobile audience requires you to have more links on your pages, as the menus will be less used. So consider that at your mobile design. Almost think of whether this menu could be useful or whether the store could be used without the menu. So that's on the navigation part. And one thing that Kettle and Fire does well is that they do feature their bestsellers. Here, their product line is a little bit narrower, so for them it makes sense. But most stores would be better off starting from their best-selling categories. So, for example, Shane starts their homepage from Shop by category. And here you actually have nicely outlined with images as well to help give the user a little bit of confidence about their choice, as well as make it more cognitively fluent. So they are featuring their main collections very well. Another example would be Casper. Similar implementation, a little bit less collections to feature, but they are selling clearly like 4 main items: mattresses, bed frames, pillows, and sheets. So you can pick and choose from here, and they have adjusted a little bit on this as well. So the main thing is mattresses, then the second main thing, and these are more like additional things, partly because most people probably have those already. Casper is known for mattresses, and also they are less average order value in general, so makes sense. Here's Fighter's Market, and they have their collections here as well, with the same principle as with Shane had, showing a little bit about the products as well. Next one is a quick one. Number 6, have a prominent search bar if necessary. And I will add that if necessary part because you may not have a lot of products. If you do, if you have hundreds of products, or if people are using the search a lot, you should encourage that. Here's World Wine from Australia. They have this prominent search bar here. There's thousands of wine types. Here's another example of Sumub. This is basically how Walmart does it, Amazon does it, Target does it. Like every big retailer does it like this because they rely on it. So if you have a lot of categories, definitely have a prominent search bar. Next up is responsibility first. So most Shopify teams take a pretty good care of it already, but not all of them do. So you'd want to make sure that it not only works on your mobile, but on many other mobiles as well. So you should not have issues with it, and it should look like mobile first site, so nothing sort of out of place. And typically, if you have an older team, they are done with desktop first, and most store owners consider the desktop way too much. So you might have a situation where it's quite difficult to use on mobile. So for example here, like this makes sense to some degree on desktop probably, but the mobile is just a ton and ton of things to go through, and things are sort of like a little bit out of place with the phone numbers and stuff like this. So you'd want to make sure that the banners and everything make sense. So for example here, not readable. So many people will not be able to read it, and it won't perform as well because of that. Next up we have just a keep it simple principle. So you had a couple of examples here already about things going all over the place, banners not loading, things being a little bit too complicated. So there's definitely a tendency to be a little bit too cute with these kinds of things, where most of the times you would actually get good results with just keeping it simple. You don't necessarily need multiple banners to try to communicate the messages. Many of these things can become distracting, and you should consider whether this is actually like a calming experience or very hectic. And in some cases you'd want to actually like produce a little bit of anxiety or even a tiny bit of overwhelm if the audience is younger, for example, if they are coming from Instagram, they might react better to that kind of high stimulus thing, as otherwise they will get bored quickly. But mostly it is pretty much you'd be better off keeping it simple and not following some of these stores that are targeting younger audiences and going really intense with the colors and banners and discounts and all of these kinds of things. So watch out for this tendency. Generally, stores start simpler and then they get more complicated over time. So that's one to watch out for. And here is a good example of one that does a lot of distracting elements, especially like here on the front there's just the tons of links to click and not any white space. So that's on that. Keep it simple, number 8. And number 9, so seal the page with social proof. So when people have come through all the way the page, like they're more likely to be a little bit more like digger type of people. So they are digging for information, they are more considerate, and then once they get to the end of the page, like that would be a good time to show a little bit of social proof and to ensure that these buyers, potential buyers, will perceive your brand as a trustworthy source. So here's a good example of how this is. You don't necessarily need to say more if you have something like this. Find us in more than 10,000 stores nationwide. That is amazing. And there's all these different places where that can be found. So very powerful. Another great example of this is the London Cashmere Company. So they have this how we're different section at the bottom. So it explains their approach and then also our story part. And while it is not exactly social proof, but it does build familiarity. So it is achieving the same kind of thing with a different approach. So the end goal here is building trust. And once you have this kind of thing, then that achieves the outcome. All right, next and lastly is just an overall visual hierarchy. So for this, I'll show you an example from this store. So first, you will get to know the brand. So you have a clear hero banner image here with the product being used and give us a little bit of a lifestyle vibe. Then there's a short background on the store here and this one. And give us a little bit of context here on why this product is special. So it's not like features, benefits section. And this is also authority, designed by athletes for athletes. And then you have some relevant logos going on. So it's like as seen section. So very much social proofy approach here and good for new products. So something that people haven't tested before, but would be now tested. Then next, there's an introduction of product lines. The 10 is lifestyle, adventure, and they're like you can move to those if you would so choose to. Later on, there's a product overview and product features on. So gives a little bit of context on what the product is, how it works, what the features are, durable design, water and weatherproof. And then it showcases the different options here later on. And then goes into the unique value proposition of the brand or the product. So there's lifestyle images outlining why it is good. So unique value proposition sort of answers why you should consider at least to buy this product. And if you still haven't picked a product that you'd like, you have this explanation here. At the end of it, you have a quiz. So you can take this Bag Finder quiz. So you obviously don't yet feel confident in clicking on any of these call to actions, which also change over time. So you're not like repeatedly saying no. It's a nice thing as well. You will get the quiz. And lastly, they have social proof. So 163 reviews circling here about it, and of course like more relevant because this is somehow like a little bit of a different new products. And then you have the real stores here as well. So if that's possible, would recommend that as an approach as well. They're like this sort of ultimate social proof that this actual product exists. It's not a scam. They do ship it around, and you can find it from a real location. So that achieves the trust part. And there's a little bit of Instagram, some founder story, and so on. So no real penalty on going long on the front page. You are able to click away from it if you choose to. So nice job here. I'll show you a couple of different examples that are not so good. Here is jobbox.com, and they have a fairly generic white jobbox section. But at least they have it, and they do have some icons here, so that's not terrible. One thing that they do that I'm not a big fan is just driving straight to bestsellers, where they could call from categories. And this is particularly because it can be overwhelming to start shopping from this level, even if you don't have all that many products here. Well, generally people have a little bit of an idea if they'd prefer beef, chicken, pork, and then they can select from there. It's easier to call from that level. And that's also what they try to do a little bit here, but they don't completely separate it. Next, we have a gift option that seems to be quite a random jump, and it's not clear from here actually like whether you need to order an entire box or not. And then just randomly jumping around on different banners without too much thought put into it, how it flows. Next up is Uniqlo. So in this kind of case, you have this almost like different offers, but it's very difficult to go through this page because you cannot like easily scroll up and down. And if you actually start scrolling harder, we'll get to the footer. And in many cases, like if you are here and you just start like scrolling aggressively, you might actually get to the footer, and it looks like there's nothing else here. So they could take the approach of trying to focus a bit more on these main categories. And in this kind of case, it would probably be the top level categories, as they have so many subcategories. So these are one of cases or bets that they are making, that this would be the thing that people would want. Okay, they would maybe want jackets, maybe fleeces, and these kinds of products. But it's a very hit or miss, where if you let the user tell what they'd be interested in, then you'd have a better chance of matching it. So that is it for the front page checklist. As you see, like there was a lot of variety here in the stores, and that's also why the checklist cannot be that long, because there's very few always and very few nevers in these kind of stores. It's just many times the answer unfortunately is it depends, or fortunately if you think of it, because it depends can also mean that you have an opportunity to give yourself a competitive advantage over your competitors because they may not get the subtleties right. So there is a lot of benefit to that. But just think through it deeply in terms of what makes sense to you. Don't just rely on this kind of generic advice. And definitely don't blindly copy big stores like Pura Vida, thinking that you would not need to explain why your store or your product would be relevant for the customer. So you have to be able to read between these different things and then make your own choices based on that, not just following others. So that's the last bit I'll give you with. And then you will be able to see from all the different examples that there's many different ways to do it, and many of them can actually differ quite a bit, but they might still be both right. So keep an open mind, and you'll do well in your e-commerce journey. Thank you very much for watching all the way through. Very impressive. This was a monster video. I very much appreciate that. Make sure to like if you haven't liked this video, because you obviously like the stuff. You can subscribe for more videos. We have these kind of walkthroughs coming through regularly. And if you are interested in having your front page and store in top-notch condition, and you are already getting some success as a merchant, go to crogurus.com/apply, and let's take a look if this could be a good, potentially a mutual fit. Thanks, and see you on the next one. Cheers.